Sin City Stories contains explicit content that may be disturbing to some listeners, including strong language, graphic details, and depictions of violent crimes. Listener discretion is advised. On a late spring night in 1955, the Moulin Rouge in Las Vegas was coming alive with the promise of breaking down racial barriers. But as the city reveled in the excitement, a dark mystery was unfolding. On May 25, 1955, renowned jazz saxophonist Wardell Gray, who'd been scheduled to be a part of the opening night entertainment at the Moulin Rouge, was found dead, his body discarded in the desert, his death shrouded in mystery. Since its founding on May 15, 1905, Las Vegas has gone from being a small railway stop in the middle of the Mojave Desert to a glittering neon oasis of gambling, shopping, fine dining, and entertainment, welcoming tens of millions of visitors from around the world every year. Through its relatively short history, the city has been witness to over a century's worth of murder, robberies, arson, and mayhem. And that's what we're here to share with you. In collaboration with MayhemInTheDesert.com, this is Sin City Stories, Vegas True Crime. The sordid tales behind the stranger-than-fiction history of fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Today, Las Vegas welcomes tens of millions of tourists every year from all over the world. But the city has an ugly history of segregation that ended only recently, in the 1960s. Interestingly, the early decades of Las Vegas saw relatively relaxed racial attitudes. However, when the Nevada legislature legalized gaming in 1931, the result was a push by Las Vegas casinos to attract tourists from Texas and elsewhere in the southern United States. These were areas where brutal Jim Crow laws were enforced to deprive Black Americans of their civil rights. And by the 1940s, these market forces, coupled with the bigoted attitudes of mob-connected owners of several strip and downtown casinos, worked to create a de facto system of racial segregation in Las Vegas gaming establishments. As for the history of the beginning of segregation in Las Vegas, the city council started denying the renewal of business licenses to Black-owned businesses beginning in the 1930s. That being said, council members were willing to grant approval if Black businesses were to relocate across the railroad tracks to the West Side, the location of the original Las Vegas town site. The roads in the West Side were unpaved, and it lacked the basic sewer and plumbing services available to the rest of Las Vegas. The injustice faced by Black Las Vegans became so dire that a 1954 issue of Ebony magazine dubbed Las Vegas the Mississippi of the West. This was due to the blatant code of racial segregation implemented throughout the city. Black entertainers were welcome to perform in the showrooms along the Strip, but were barred from staying at those same hotels or eating in their restaurants. And residential redlining resulted in a majority of the city's Black residents living on the West Side. Amidst this backdrop, investors seeking to develop a more inclusive Las Vegas built the Moulin Rouge Hotel. Will Max Schwartz, Louis Rubin, Alexander Bismo, and a group of other partners owned the Rouge and built it on Bonanza Road. This placed the hotel and casino in a prime location, between the Las Vegas Strip, which served a predominantly white audience, and the segregated Black neighborhood of West Las Vegas. Designed by local architects Walter Zick and Howard Sharp, and built at a cost of $3.5 million, or roughly $112 million in today's dollars, the Moulin Rouge officially opened its doors on May 24, 1955. When it opened, the Rouge was fully integrated from top to bottom, from the employees to the patrons to the entertainers, making it the first hotel casino of its type in the entire United States. Roughly a month after opening, the Rouge found itself on the cover of Life magazine, featuring a photo of two of its showgirls. Notable performers would make their way to the Moulin Rouge to party until dawn, and the Rouge became known for its famous third show, staged nightly at 2:15 a.m. Not only did major black entertainers, including Lena Horne, Sammy Davis Jr., and Duke Ellington, come over to the showroom at the Rouge, but several prominent white performers did so as well. People like George Burns, Judy Garland, Jack Benny, Zsa Zsa Gabor, and Frank Sinatra would drop in after their shows to gamble and perform for packed audiences, many of whom had made their way over to the Rouge from the Strip. However, the success of the Moulin Rouge was to be short-lived. On a clear fall day in October of 1955, dancers, waiters, and dealers reporting for work found padlocks on the doors. After only 5 months of operations, America's only integrated hotel casino had shut down. The reason for the sudden closure was unclear. Some believed that the owners of established resorts on the Strip pressed banks to call in loans to their red-hot competitor. Others blamed the mob, who may have been hell-bent on proving they ran the city. Or it could have been something as simple as oversaturation of the casino market, as 4 other hotels that opened around the same time also faced financial difficulties. Despite its closure, the Moulin Rouge would go on to play an important role in the advancement of civil rights in Las Vegas. Segregation continued as a part of normal operations on the Vegas Strip, and those hotel casinos refused to hire former front-of-house workers from the Moulin Rouge. In March of 1960, Westsiders James McMillan and Charles West, Nevada's first black dentist and physician, demanded a meeting with civic leaders in Las Vegas. Under threat of a mass march down Las Vegas Boulevard, the mayor, police chief, sheriff, resort bosses, and even the governor of Nevada agreed to sit down with McMillan and West in the former coffee shop of the Moulin Rouge for a discussion. Under a pact unofficially known as the Moulin Rouge Agreement, official segregation on the Strip ended at 6 p.m. that day. Over the decades, the property changed management and ownership on numerous occasions and closed and reopened several times. Renovation plans were made but never came to fruition, and in 2003, the first of several fires to plague the property over the years gutted the complex. In 2010, the front facade and tower were demolished out of safety concerns. Multiple fires struck the property again in 2017, which made the buildings totally unsalvageable. In typical Las Vegas fashion, the owners of the Moulin Rouge worked to create an opening night to remember. Hosted by boxer Joe Louis, who also held a small ownership stake in the Rouge, the celebration featured appearances by Hollywood royalty, including Tallulah Bankhead, Harry Belafonte, Gregory Peck, Dorothy Lamour, and the infamous Rat Pack. Entertainment in the standing room-only showroom included the Platters, who were on the verge of breaking onto the charts with their hit Only You. Vaudeville comics Stump and Stumpy hit the stage. The tap-dancing Hines Kids made an appearance. And the whole night was carried by the incredible floor show, which was like nothing Vegas had ever seen before. Also on the bill, engaged to provide the band on opening night, was famed jazz musician Benny Carter. Scheduled to be a part of that band was Wardell Gray. Wardell Gray was only 34 years old when he made the trek from his home in California to southern Nevada to help herald the opening of the Moulin Rouge and take a step forward towards an integrated Vegas. The youngest of 4 children, Gray was born in Oklahoma City in 1921. He spent his early childhood years there before moving to Detroit in 1935, where he studied music at Cass Tech High. After playing in several local bands, he landed work with jazz pianist and band leader Earl Hines, thanks to his relationship with dancer Jerry Walker, who he'd later go on to marry. Gray left Hines late in 1946, making the trek west and settling in Los Angeles. Soon after his arrival there, he recorded his first session under his own name. While living in L.A., he worked with Benny Carter, blues singer Ivory Joe Hunter, and even backed up Billy Eckstine on his tour of the West Coast. But Gray's main focus was working the clubs along Central Avenue, which were still booming thanks to a huge influx of wartime defense spending in the area. It was these club gigs that led to Wardell Gray getting national attention, thanks to a recording called The Chase, featuring himself and fellow saxophonist Dexter Gordon. The success of The Chase was the break that Gray needed. In late 1947, he found himself working in a group with the legendary Benny Goodman as a part of Goodman's brief flirtation with the bebop genre of jazz. Goodman eventually disbanded the group, but by now, Wardell Gray was established as an up-and-coming musician, and he was in demand. He worked with the Count Basie Orchestra in late 1948 and early 1949 when he left to return to Benny Goodman. However, life in the Benny Goodman Band wasn't great. Goodman was tough to work with at the best of times. This, combined with constant travel and a crumbling marriage, made Gray increasingly unhappy. Wardell left Goodman and went back to working with Count Basie through 1950 and 1951. But again, the constant travel with Basie's big band was getting to Gray, and he decided to call it quits and head back to Los Angeles so he could spend more time at home. Wardell Gray's recording sessions started to become fewer and fewer, and there were increasing signs of a lack of engagement. Recording sessions he did participate in showed that he was still capable of playing superbly, but it seemed Gray was becoming disillusioned with the music business. It was also around this time that Gray allegedly became involved in drugs. Word was that he'd begun dabbling in heroin. Some close associates of Gray swore he never touched the stuff, but others felt the drugs were taking their toll and his playing was less fluent. Despite the recent slump and his drug problems, Gray was working regularly, and when Benny Carter got the call to lead the band on opening night at the Moulin Rouge, he reached out to Gray. Gray attended rehearsals and seemed to be his old self leading up to opening night at the Rouge, which was why it was baffling that when the Hotel Casino held its grand opening on May 25th, Gray was nowhere to be found. Someone was dispatched to Gray's hotel room to check on him, but there was no trace of the musician in his quarters. The mystery of Gray's whereabouts would be solved soon enough. His body was discovered in the desert just outside the city on May 26, 1955. The owner of the Boulderado Ranch, located near the spot where College Street intersected with the railroad tracks, contacted the police after discovering Gray's body in a drainage ditch on his property. Gray was still dressed in a dark blue suit, dress shirt, and tie. Curiously, Gray's body bore no signs of trauma aside from a scratch above his left eyebrow. An autopsy later determined that Gray had died of a broken neck and a fractured skull that appeared to have been caused by a blunt object. Detectives with the Las Vegas Police Department interviewed those who were last in the company of Wardell Gray in an effort to reconstruct the events leading up to his death. Police learned that one of the last people Gray was seen alive with was Theodore Homer Haley, a dancer at the Moulin Rouge. Officers found an intoxicated Haley when they went to interview the performer at his West Side apartment. Haley was arrested and taken in for questioning, but he denied any involvement in Gray's death. A break in the investigation occurred a few hours later when a friend of Haley went to the police and informed them that he had lent Haley his car the prior morning. Police searched the vehicle and located blood spots. Upon being confronted with the new details provided by his friend, Haley changed his story. He admitted that he'd run into Gray at about 12:30 a.m. in the lobby of the Moulin Rouge. The two struck up a conversation, and Haley invited Gray to a dope party at his apartment. At some point during the festivities, Gray and Haley sat on a bed while shooting heroin. Haley told police that when he came to, he saw Gray sprawled out on the floor with a small cut above his eye. He thought Gray was unconscious, so he wet a towel and placed it under the musician's head. Haley said he then left the apartment and walked around downtown Las Vegas. Haley's common-law wife, who was employed as a sex worker, came to the apartment with a client at around 8 a.m. and discovered Gray's body. This triggered the series of events leading to Haley asking to borrow a friend's car. Haley wanted to transport Gray's body into the desert in an effort to avoid police questioning him for narcotics use. Haley placed Gray's body in the back seat of the car and drove into the desert until he found a sufficiently desolate spot. Then, Haley dragged the body out of the car and rolled it into a ditch about 9 feet away from the road. Investigators put Haley through a lie detector exam and determined that he did not strike Gray during what the local press had dubbed a heroin spree. Police signed on to Haley's version of the events leading to Wardell Gray's death. In support of this theory, some hypothesized that the additional injuries to the spine may have been caused by the force of Gray's body being dropped in the desert by Haley. In the end, the only criminal charges in relation to Gray's death was a charge against Haley for removing Gray's body from the Moulin Rouge, for which he received a 90-day sentence in the Clark County Jail. But others weren't so certain that these were really the circumstances behind the death of Wardell Gray. Some of the Jazz Musicians Associates questioned aspects of the official story. The main one being that many believed it to be impossible for Gray to suffer a broken neck and fractured skull falling just 18 inches from the top of a bed to the floor. Several other theories were put forward regarding Gray's death. Some believed that Gray was murdered over an unpaid gambling debt, a belief bolstered by the organized crime element percolating just beneath the surface across the city during the 1950s. Others suspected that Gray may have been involved in a drug deal gone bad. It was also speculated that Gray may have been the victim of a racially motivated murder. Remember, at this time in Las Vegas, segregation was still in full swing, and there were those in the community not happy about the fully integrated Moulin Rouge opening for business. At the end of it all, on Wardell Gray's official death certificate, in response to the portion of the form asking, "How did the injury occur?" it simply stated, "Fall on cement floor." Regardless of all the theories, there was no in-depth investigation into Wardell Gray's death. In fact, there wasn't even an autopsy. To this day, it's never been fully explained how his body came to be in the desert or why his neck was broken. And that the body belonged to one of the top jazz musicians on the West Coast seemed to be of no consequence to the authorities. As for the Moulin Rouge, over the years, there were efforts to revitalize the property, but they failed to take off. After a series of fires in the early 2000s gutted the historic structure, its famous neon sign was taken to the Las Vegas Neon Museum for preservation. Today, only a vacant lot and frame for the original marquee remain where this historic hotel and casino once stood. To learn more about this Las Vegas true crime story and many others, visit mayheminthedesert.com and get yourself acquainted with the darker side of Sin City's history. Sin City Stories, Vegas True Crime, is based on material researched and written by Meagan and Anthony Smith and is adapted for podcast, edited, and narrated by Jeff Walker. Sin City Stories, Vegas True Crime is a co-production of Mayhem in the Desert and Walker New Media. Copyright 2024.